Welcome to the NHL Wraparound podcast featuring Neil Smith, President General Manager of the 1994 Stanley Cup champion New York Rangers, and longtime ESPN NHL veteran Vic Morren. Together, they share no-nonsense opinions on news and issues around the National Hockey League. Whether you're a casual or diehard fan, each episode of NHL Wraparound will leave you more informed. Now, here's your hosts, Neil and Vic.
Welcome to the NHL Wraparound Hall of Fame edition. Vic Morren, along with Neil Smith. The National Hockey League has a long history of great open ice hitters, from Eddie Shore to Red Horner, Bill Barilko, and Leo Boivin, and even more recently, Jacob Trouba. But in between those eras is perhaps the greatest open ice hitter of them all. And Neil, please welcome Scott Stevens in as our special guest.
Yeah, Scott, it is great. And thank you for doing this, and thank you for being on the show. And it's an honor because you and I got to know each other in 96 with Team Canada. I think that's the first time we got to talk, and then we got to do some TV together. You were our nemesis for so many years. And, with the Rangers and the Devils, and it was such a great rivalry and so on. So it's really fun to have you on here on the Hall of Fame show. I want to ask you right off the bat, though, a question that I said to Vic. I got to ask him this. It's driving me nuts that in today's hockey, you see a great hit given out. Let's say Trouba has given out, when he played for the Rangers, he gave out a number of fabulous, and he has to fight. After every one of those hits, a guy comes in and's got to fight him on a clean hit, no penalty, and a guy comes in and fights him. And I want to ask you, you delivered a lot of great hits in your time, caught guys with their head down. Did you ever have to fight a guy because you gave out a clean hit?
No, I don't remember that, because I think hitting was a big part of the game. And no, I don't recall that. And to be honest with you, and I give Trouba credit, but I think in this day and age, I would just turn my cheek. If I give a good clean hit, I would almost let them take a penalty on me and try to swing the game. But I get it. You want to stand up and be accountable. But I think if you're giving good clean hits, which we don't really see as many as we used to, obviously, no, that shouldn't happen. And it bothers me too, and I find it very interesting. But I think, because I think sometimes, I hate to say it, sometimes there might be some free passes given and in a game. And then so when this does happen, it seems to be a big news, and people want to get retribution on a hit. And that's my feeling on it, because, in my day, we used to finish all hits. And I'm not saying finish hits taking out of the play. But if a guy was working to get the red line to dump it in, you should make him pay and keep your way going back towards your end, obviously. But it is something that it's odd, and it is the way it is. But like I said, because they're so few and far between, especially the big ones, that everyone gets up in arms about it.
Yeah, and even when Bedard got hurt there in his rookie season, and I give Foligno credit for doing what he did. He automatically fought Smith, who was the guy who stepped up on Bedard, but it was a clean hit. Actually, it was in New Jersey where that happened. And they stepped up. So we do research, even as well as you think you know somebody, you got to do some research before they come on the show. And we've had Scotty Bowman on. Scotty Bowman, I got to tell you, was like he's 22 years old. He's 92. And he was as sharp, certainly sharper than me, but he was very, very, very sharp. We got to go all the way back to the 30s. But looking at your life and your time, I guess I never realized. I realized that you'd been with the Capitals and that kind of stuff, and that. I didn't realize you were a Ranger. You were a Kitchener Ranger.
Yeah, for 1 year. Yeah,
and your numbers retired by the Kitchener Rangers.
Yeah, it was a wonderful year. We had a great team. A lot of players went on to play in the NHL, and we were fortunate to win the Memorial Cup that year. So it was a very special year. I moved on. Some guys stayed back for a few more years or a couple years, but I I wanted to fast track as quick as possible in the NHL and was able to make that happen. But it was a tremendous year, and we still keep in touch. We've had some reunions, and it was a great group of players and a great team. It might be one of the strongest teams you've ever seen in junior hockey, I think.
So, Scott, you wore number 3 in Kitchener. You wore number 3 in Washington, I remember. And then was that the end of number 3, or did you have number 3 in St. Louis? I don't remember.
No, I had 2 there, number 2.
And then you went to the Devils and you couldn't get 3 because your buddy had number 3.
Yeah, it was funny. Yeah, that's right. Kenny had that, and I really didn't have much of a say. I don't know, Lou sort of gave me 4, but 4 is a wonderful number, and Miles O'Connor might have had 4. He was up and down, and so I took 4. And it was sort of just given, but it's a great number. Obviously, it looked good on Bobby Orr, and I'm not Bobby Orr, but it was a special number.
Scott, you were the first overall pick by the Caps, 5th overall actually, in 1982. Your first game, first goal on your first shot. Do you remember it?
Yeah. That's probably the only one I really remember. Yeah, it was just outside the blue line. My parents were at Madison Square Gardens. It was against the Rangers. Yeah. And we won the draw, and it came to me, and I just took a slap shot at the net. And I don't have Al McGinnis slap shot, but somehow I beat Eddie Mew. I think it was 5-hole, and that was it. And, it was pretty special, especially my parents there who are a big part of my, success getting to the NHL. It was pretty nice.
I remember you coming up as a rookie and watching you play, extremely gifted, but very emotional also. And in your first 12 seasons in the NHL, you had over 100 penalty minutes. You had 200 plus 4 times. And I thought from an emotional component, you were outright scary as a rookie. And as you started to develop, your intensity, your ferocity never left you. But where was that point, and which players may have been influential in terms of having you channel that emotion just a little bit, but still be able to maintain your effectiveness?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. First of all, it was Brian Murray, who was my coach, great coach, and the late Brian Murray. He actually pulled me aside and he said, Scott, I like the way you play and I like your intensity, but we need you on the ice more. We can't have you in the penalty box. So I thought about that and I said, yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, I'd like to play more, and ice time's fun. So I think it kind of started there, and coming from him, and that's where it started. But I still think I found a way to play on the edge too after that meeting with Brian, that I could still be effective, and I think that goes with maturity, to find a way. If you can find that way of playing on the line, physical, nasty, mean, without crossing it, it's a fine art. And I think over years you learn that as a player, especially if you're more of a physical player. And I think I found that and was able to walk that line pretty well.
And in your last 10 seasons, you eclipsed 100 only twice, and those totals were 100 and 103, so you're just barely over. So it speaks exactly to what you're saying there.
Correct. And there's no question, if I'm in the box for 5 minutes and we get a power play or we have a PK, I'd rather be in the ice. I want to help my team. I'm not helping my team in the box. So I think it was more important that I stayed on the ice, and I like to be on the ice and play all different situations. So that was definitely a factor as I grew older. But I think it's kind of common. Most guys sort of mellow a bit and get a bit of a reputation that they hopefully can keep for a little bit. Obviously, you still got to stand up once in a while. Otherwise, there's young guys coming up and they want to take advantage of you. But for the most part, you've sort of established yourself a bit to a certain extent.
Scott, you were 18 years old when you get to Washington, and we just talked to Stevie Yzerman the other day, and he was 18 when he got to Detroit, and we asked him similar questions like, who was your mentor at 18 years old? There had to be somebody there saying, kid, you got to do this or that. Well,
fortunately, when I arrived, I was drafted to the Capitals. they made the big trade with Rod Langway, Brian Englund, Craig Laughlin, Doug Jarvis. So, a lot of people thought, that's a big trade, and there's not going to be a lot of room there for maybe myself to make that team with two incredible defensemen and Brian and Rod there. But actually, I think it sort of helped me slide in there and make the team. But I have to look at those guys. Mike Gartner's a guy, Rod, they were really influential. But Brian Englund was the biggest guy, and I've talked about this many times about Brian. Brian kind of took me under his wing, and I believe I was his partner for a bit of it, but he took me before every game, and we sat down together in our stalls, and he went over the other team's roster, and he's a veteran player, and he told me every guy what to look for, every forward, what they do and watch for. So, he put a lot of time in with me and showed me the ropes and helped me a lot. So, along with those other veteran players, there's a lot on that team when they made that trade, but Brian was pretty special in that way.
That's a great story. I didn't know that, and I know Brian Engblom, and I know how insightful he is. I want to ask you, too, so you go to St. Louis, not about going to St. Louis, but about you were the captain there. I didn't remember that you were the captain there for that 1 year. And then you get to the Devils, and you're not the captain the first year. Bruce Driver is, and then you become the captain. And I guess the question is, how did you figure out how to lead? Like, being a leader is something that is in a leader, but you also have to figure it out a little bit. And I think that obviously you were a great leader for the Devils and stuff, but where did that influence come from, or who did you watch and try to take after?
Well, to be honest, I think it's just, I don't really say a lot. I will speak when I feel it's necessary, but I always felt leading by example is the best way to be a leader, and on and off the ice. And I think of how I carried myself and what I did, how I prepared, and how I came to practice, how I practiced. I think that's all that counted. And I think that's by far the most important thing. Words are words, and like I said, there was a time, but for the most part, I didn't have to say anything. If I was upset in practice, I would look for a guy with his head down, and I wouldn't be afraid to hit him the same way I would hit the opponent in a real game. And guys knew that, and they knew I didn't like to lose. I was a bit of a pouter, and they knew, winning it was about winning, and that's why we're there. And I didn't like to lose, and the guys knew that. And like I said, if I wasn't happy in the practice, someone could be in trouble, and they knew that, so they came ready to play. And that's pretty much how it was for me. I didn't really have a lot to say. Like I said, I think that's the best way to lead is by example.
Scott, you played your first 8 seasons with the Capitals. You signed as a free agent in St. Louis in 1990. And after Brendan Shanahan signed in St. Louis the following year, you're awarded to the Devils as compensation. And St. Louis was a city that you never wanted to leave. You wanted to settle there. You held out for a bit. How difficult was that adjustment coming over to Jersey, knowing that this was not a desired location for you?
Well, actually, it's probably tougher on the wife, and the family. We just had a baby there in St. Louis, and we had a 16-month-old. We just bought a house, and we just sold the house. So it was a lot going on, but as a player, you just play. And that's all I thought about was playing. But I have to say, Lou Lamoriello was really good. He really wanted me and my family there. He put a lot into it to get me and to make sure we were settled and happy. So, and it means a lot when you have the general manager, very excited about you come in there. And to be honest with you, St. Louis was phenomenal. We had a great team. It's a great city. It's a great place to play, great place to live. All those things are wonderful. But as a hockey player, you just move on and play. But Lou came to the airport, picked us up, put the car seats in with us with the kids, and he was there when we first arrived, which was pretty classy and meant a lot. And he made sure, we were looked after to find a place, and we were comfortable, and that goes a long ways. And on a team, it always starts with the ownership and then the general manager. I think it trickles down. If you have good ownership and a great general manager that cares about winning, you can do good things and makes everybody feel important.
What about the acclimation with your new teammates? And I believe Kirk Muller was holding out also, and there seemed to be a little bit of fragmentation amongst the rank and file there. So how easy and how quickly were you actually able to fit in and be comfortable as a player with the Devils?
It wasn't too bad. I mean, the captaincy was a little bit of a thing for me because, Bruce Driver's a great person, great captain, and that was a little awkward, I thought. I talked with Bruce and I said, Bruce, I still need you a lot. And Bruce is a very organized individual with scheduling and this and that. So I made him well known that I really need your help still in that capacity and in other areas. And he was wonderful, especially stepping in first year or second year being the captain. So that was probably the biggest adjustment for me. But other than that, I thought the team was good. I looked at the team on paper and I was kind of, I was excited about that. Not that you want to leave somewhere, but you got to move forward and look at the positives. So, we sort of had to build and find our identity, and we did that. And we became a difficult team to play against, and it all worked out. But I think that captaincy was the biggest little adjustment there, because you're just coming in here and then, there's a lot of guys that have been there a while. You're like, and then you take it I didn't take it, but I was given the C by Lou from Bruce, but it all worked out. And Bruce is a great friend and of mine right now still.
And Bruce is a great guy. He played for the Rangers there for a while when I was there, so I can attest to what a good guy is. I want to take you back and explain to the listeners and the viewers what was going on in this era of Group 1 free agency, because you were Group 2 when you left Washington, and that never happened, that a Group 2 got signed, because the compensation was so overwhelming. And I remember when David Poile decided to take the compensation and not match the offer, it was stunning, because people just didn't do that. If there ever was a Group 2 signing, and there are very few, the team almost always matched. But then we get to that era when the Blues have this Group 1 opportunity, and the Group 1 meant, just for review, that if you signed a player who was a Group 1, you got the player. There was no matching. You got him. Brendan Shanahan was one of those guys. Adam Graves was one of those guys. And if you knew the rules, you knew you had him. Now what happened was the team that he came from and you had to work out a deal. If you couldn't work out a deal, it went to an arbitrator for what they called equalization. And how that worked was the team that signed the player put up what they felt was equalization, and the team who lost the player put up what they thought was equalization, and they argued it in front of an arbitrator, and it was the arbitrator's decision. So obviously in this case, this arbitrator decided that what Lou Lamoriello and the Devils put up in the player of Scott Stevens was better equalization, or more even equalization, than Curtis Joseph and Rod Brindamore, who the Blues had put up. My question to you, Scott, is, after saying all that, at what point do you remember that you first became aware that you were even part of this whole fiasco that was going on with Brendan Shanahan and equalization?
Well, I believe it kind of all came down at the Canada Cup that year. And actually, Brendan was there too. And it was interesting. This is when that was all playing out. And so that was a little odd. But yeah, that's when that sort of all came down. And it was interesting. I guess I wasn't expecting to be the compensation, but that was the package that Lou asked for and was animate about having. And you're right, they did put up a couple pretty good players, Curtis Joseph and Rod Brindamore.
Did you first find out when they told you, oh, by the way, you got awarded to the Devils, or did you know that might happen?
Well, I knew it might happen, but I can't even remember where it was when it all happened, to be honest with you. But I just remember that I know we were in training camp for, I believe it was the Canada Cup. It was like pins and needles what was going to happen. And then it all came to a head. But, It all worked out. You explained it perfectly. Like I said, as a hockey player, you just want to play hockey and you move on. You're not going to drag your feet, and there's nothing you can do about it. The rules are the rules, and it worked once for St. Louis and didn't work the second time. But I was fortunate to win some cups in New Jersey, and sometimes they say everything happens for a reason.
Speaking of those cups, you win in 95, 2000. You're the Conn Smythe Trophy winner. You win in overtime in Dallas on Jason Arnott's goal, and in 2003 against the Anaheim Ducks. But you and Neil will always be intertwined by one of the series for the ages, the 94 Eastern Final. And as a fan myself of the game, of that series, I thought that Devils team in 94 was the best club personnel-wise that I've seen. And that includes to this date. Even though they didn't win the cup and maybe you just weren't ready to win, whatever the case is, how do you see that 94 team up against the 3 cup winners?
Yeah, you're right. That was a big year for us. We put up a lot of points. We were very high in all the different categories, goals against. I even think goals for, we were up there. So it was a really good hockey team, and it was obviously very disappointing. Maybe we were a little young. I'm not sure. Maybe that could that be it? And sometimes you learn from your mistakes and you learn from losing. I don't think there's anything to be embarrassed about that. Obviously, we felt whoever won that series was going to probably win the cup, and it turned out that way for the Rangers against Vancouver. So I think if you learn from it and become better, that's the most important thing. And I think we did as a team, and we're able to go on and win 3 Stanley Cups. And that's the way I look at it. Obviously, you'd like to win them all. We had a chance to win back-to-back. I believe it was after maybe 2001, I forget, but we lost to Colorado, Game 7. So That hurt. So we were there. We had a really good team. I think like a little mini dynasty, almost you could say, but maybe not enough.
Can you talk about that first cup against Detroit, which ended in a sweep? And the regular season wasn't great. It was a truncated season because of the lockout. You managed to get in. And then once you get in, everything started to roll for that club.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of distractions that year with the lockout. And I think it made it very difficult to make the playoffs and to win that year. And I think Mark Messier said that. He said, that's hard. You can look at it and put an asterisk, but that might have been one of the harder years to win a cup. And you're right. We didn't have a great regular season, which was a shortened season. But I think by having the experience from the year before playing the Rangers and losing that, we kind of knew, and there's no such thing as a switch, but I think we all knew that when we had to batten down the hatches, we could do that because of what we went through the year before. And I think we just started to win the playoffs, and we just got better and better as the playoffs went on as a team, and got back to where we were the year before when we played the Rangers and lost. And we never said this, but we felt invincible as we were going through that playoff run. And I think if you watch the finals, we pretty much dominated a very, very good hockey club in Detroit. So it shows you how, like I said, we knew we were good, and we just kept getting better and stronger and had that great feeling like we weren't going to lose. And I can't say we had that feeling against the Rangers, but we had that feeling that year that we weren't going to lose, and we were ready to move forward and win.
Is it because of what you learned in 94?
I think you learn a lot, and just the experience, I can't put my finger on it, but you gain experience, and I think you learn from mistakes in life, don't we? I mean, everyday life, not just sports. So why not in sports? And I think that's how it works sometimes. And it's not fun and hurts, but maybe that's what you need. You need that pain and that hurt to move forward and take the next step as a team and as individuals.
Scott, 3 cups in New Jersey, 3 different coaches. Obviously, the most memorable to me is Jacques Lemaire, because he changed the game in that era a little bit with his coaching style. But you also had Larry Robinson, who came in late that season and guided you to a Stanley Cup. And then Pat Burns, dearly departed Pat Burns, who was just a great hockey man. All products of the Montreal Canadiens, those three guys. Can you talk about those three different coaches that you had?
Yeah. It was pretty amazing when Jacques and Larry came, and then Jacques Caron, the goalie coach. He was a good person still. He's a special guy. They were a great trio, and they all brought something different. But I have to tell you, the systems and the way they taught us to play and showed us certain things on the ice, it was like I felt like a little kid. I felt like, man, I've never learned so much in my life from these gentlemen, and especially Jacques. It was his footprint. It was his stamp on how we played. And we're talking a foot here or 2 feet there, stick position. And you don't think that means a lot, but it does. It's a big part of the game, positioning, keeping people where you want to keep them, keeping them in that dangerous area. And we were excited and we learned so much, and we could see how it worked. You worked in practice and you had some failures trying it, how to play a 2-on-1 and this and that. But then before long, we honed our skills and we became really good at the system and playing a certain way. And then you put into the game situations and you start winning, and it's like, man, it was like you got to rejuvenate a second shot. That's my 13th year. And I had a lot of good coaches and I learned a lot, but I learned by far the most that year with Jacques Lemaire. And I know the other guys felt the same way. It was like, wow, man, we're winning, and it seems it's so much fun, and all these things are working, how to play a 2-on-1, how to come back in your own zone and be positional and take this way, take that away, give the goalie this, you take that. It was fun. And it took a little bit, but Jacques was good, and it was awesome. And that's, like I said, learned a lot, learned the most I learned in 13 years.
And Scott, I want to skip forward to Larry Robinson, because that year, if my memory serves me right, Lou fired the coach late in the season.
Robbie Fatour.
Yeah, and had Larry take over. And then Larry guides you to a Stanley Cup win. I mean, it was unheard of in the NHL for a coach to be relieved at that point in the season, and his replacement guide the team to the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, what do you think about a GM doing that? Takes a lot, doesn't it? I mean,
oh my gosh,
that's like sticking your neck out. But, he believed we need another voice. He didn't like the way we were going towards the playoffs, obviously. And he felt Larry was the guy that, everyone held so high and everyone had so much respect for Larry. I think he felt that he would be the guy that would get everyone's attention and get us back to where we need to be to win again. And it worked out beautifully. We still had some ups and downs against the Flyers. We were in a critical position until Larry kind of came in and had a speech and was like, I don't know what team you guys are, what you're doing, but that's not us. That's not even close to who we are as a team and how we play. And I think from there on, it sunk in, and, we got together. Like, Larry's right. We're not playing our game. We're not playing how we have to play to win and have success. And we were able to come back, and I believe we had to win 3 straight against the Flyers, and 2 of the wins had to be up there. So you pretty much had to play flawless hockey to make that happen. And we were able to do that and go on to win a Stanley Cup. But, you always have those challenging moments, those moments in a series or in a playoff run where you're challenged as a team, and that could be the defining moment. And I think that whole that part was the defining moment where Larry came in and just was very upset and couldn't believe what he was watching, how we were playing, and not giving ourselves a chance to win. And then we got back on track and started playing for each other and playing the right way and playing the systems. And we won our second Stanley Cup.
And then your third cup comes from another coach and famous coach, coached a lot, Pat Burns, different personality again. What about that? What about Pat and his coaching style in that year?
Let me tell you, I have to give Pat a lot of credit because, Pat could have came in and said, this is how I want to play. I want to change the systems. I want to play what we're doing. I don't want to play that way in the neutral zone or in the D zone. But he came in and he took the assistant coaches and he said, show me what you guys do. Show me how you play. And I believe Bob Carpenter's one of them, and they showed how we're supposed to play and the style and the system. and Pat enforced it. And I give Pat a lot of credit. I don't think we win that cup with Pat if Pat comes in and maybe has a bit of an ego and says, we're changing everything. It worked for you a couple of times, but we need to redo everything. And he didn't do that. And I was so happy because I really appreciate the way we played. That's one reason why I signed on there when I was a free agent. I didn't want to leave. I knew how we played. I knew it was a way to win and win championships. And Pat followed suit. He just made sure everybody was accountable and everybody did their job. And that's how we won. And I'm so happy for Pat, and the way he came in and handled that was superb.
And it's no coincidence that in those 3 championship seasons, you had 3 of the most memorable hits of your career. In 95, final against Detroit, Slava Kozlov. 2000, Game 7 against Philadelphia in the Eastern Final, Eric Lindros, and in the 03 final against Paul Kariya. And in your way, you made enormous marks on each of those playoff wins.
When I was playing physical, the other things for my game, they came easy. If I tried to do it a different way, it didn't work. It didn't work for me. I had to do what got me there. And when I was playing physical and mean and nasty, finishing my checks, the other parts came. You know, if you get an assist or you score a goal, that came easy. But if I tried it the other way, it didn't work. So, and I think it's a huge part of the game. I think it's an intimidation factor. And I mean, when the other team sees a big hit, I think it drops them down a notch, just as a big goal sort of brings you up. And I think you can change the game a little bit with a big hit, just like a big goal or a shorthanded goal can do the same thing. And, you know, I tried to inspire my team or get an edge by being physical and being intimidating on the ice.
So we started the show talking about you, open ice hits. We've just done it again. 14th all time in career penalty minutes, 2,785. Yet your style, the way you hit shoulder down, I think people would say, well, you know, this guy had to have taken a lot of dirty penalties during the course of his career. Do you know how many elbowing penalties you actually had during the course of your 22-season NHL career?
I think someone told me that. I think it might have been 1.
It's actually
okay,
4. But still, for the amount of punishment that you gave out, for that number to be that low is a true testament to the way that you played the game.
You know, Vic, those were all bad calls, you know. They were.
Well, I'm glad that we're bringing a little bit of levity into this show now.
I mean, you're right. You know what? I wanted to play clean. I'm a guy that sticks up for people. I don't want to see people get hurt, but I took a lot of pride in playing clean and giving a good hit. And I think I had it down pretty well because you can make mistakes when you play that way. You know, things change quick. So, yeah, I think I'm pretty fortunate. And when someone told me that, I was like, wow, that sort of helps because there's a lot of people that kind of say other things about you, but that's what the world's about, right? You got 50 that love you, 50 that hate you, but that's fine. But no, it's interesting. It's an interesting point. But like I said, I always practiced and wanted to make sure I had a clean hit. I never wanted to put my team down with a penalty, with a bad hit, or running myself out of position for a hit that would create an odd man situation. So, yeah. But I mean, when you do something so long, and I was a physical guy right from the start. You know, when I was a little kid, when I played the game, I was always pretty physical from a little toddler.
You did bring some comedy to the show by saying all those calls were bad, and I don't know what's funnier, that or Robbie Ftorek throwing the bench onto the ice in Detroit, which kind of led to his firing. That was a moment that we don't quite see. But something that you don't know, Scott, and Neil knows this, and you'll see where I'm going with this in a second, that, you know, in order to burn off a little bit of nervous energy before we come on the show, I always have the Three Stooges on before we start our shows. and understand that you are a fan of the Three Stooges from what we were reading. And look, we all love Curly. Larry was the straight guy. Shemp is an acquired taste. But given the amount of punishment you gave out during the course of your career, I see you kind of more as a Mo fan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, that was a fun show, a great comedy, and they took a lot of abuse. Those guys, they took a lot of pain, but it was fun to watch that with my brothers. That was our go-to.
Did you ever try any slapstick with them?
No, I didn't. No. Well, yeah, I mean, growing up with three brothers, we did have our, it was a pretty crazy household. My mom never finished the living room until we were older because, we played mini sticks there and the wicker got broken. So she waited till we were growing up and out of the house to finish decorating and doing certain things in the house. So, we were competitive, the three of us. So that kind of helped, in making the NHL heaven. We were all a year apart, so we could play together and fight together and get in trouble together.
Scott, two things that I want to mention before you go to the audience is the first player ever to have your number retired by the New Jersey Devils was number 4, your number 4, which is a great honor. You must have felt really honored that night.
Yeah, there's no question. To be the first is pretty special, and it was wonderful. I'll never forget that. I mean, that's something you dream of winning Stanley Cups, but the Hall of Fame and having your number retired by your team is very special. And what a great moment and a great gesture by the organization. We have a great fan base. I know New York has an incredible fan base, but the people in New Jersey are wonderful, and they always are appreciative of what we did, and they're always thanking you. That's something that's really special when you have fans come up and thank you for what you did, for all that hard work and time you put in and getting banged up. They're like, thank you for what you did. And they say that to a lot of the players that won cups there. And that's pretty special when you have fans coming up and appreciating you and thanking you for what you did for the state.
And well deserved. And I know you think that I'm a lot older than you. You must think.
Well, I was looking
because
today,
I was GM when you were playing.
I was looking today. I go, man, Neil hasn't changed. He looks really good. And I'm thinking, man, I'm looking old. Now, are we around the same age or what's going on here?
No. But I got something for you that I bet you don't know. And with this, I'm going to wrap. You actually played with a defenseman that was my defense partner.
Okay.
And he ended up playing with you. Now, you probably won't be able to guess at the name, and I don't want to have to make you wait around for it. But I played for the Dayton Gems, and my defense partner was Dwight Schofield.
Oh, wow. Dwight Schofield. Yeah, he was good. He was a good protector, wasn't he?
Yeah, right. Well, he was for me, and I needed it. And
he was a tough.
I know that he played with you guys. I read that in Washington they got him on waivers, brought him in to make sure that nobody took advantage of you and Langway.
Yeah, no, he was a tough customer, and no one wanted to mess with him. Yeah, that's interesting. That's cool. Yeah, very nice. Yeah. So yeah, we're not too far off in age, probably then, right, Neil? I guess.
I think we are probably, but I won't go into that. No,
He's
but
probably closer to me.
Yeah. Well, you're. I put you in with Mess and Gretz and those guys, aren't you? Aren't you in their age?
Yeah,
group?
I think I'm maybe 2 years. It always felt like I was a lot younger, but I think I was only 2 to 3 years younger than those guys. To be honest with you, yeah.
Well, the one thing I'll never forget about Scoey, and if I called him today, he had that thick Boston accent, and I'd always go, "Hey, Scoey there," and he'd go, "Smitty there." Remember that he had that heavy duty accent.
Yeah. He was a tough customer. He was a good man.
Yeah, right out of Boston. Well, listen, thank you, Scott, for taking time at your cottage to do this with us. It's really fun. It's cathartic for me, and I know how much Vic enjoys these, and we enjoy going down memory lane. And who deserves memory lane more than you guys? And you had a great career, you had a great life. You've been a great role model for so many people. And again, thanks for taking your time.
Well, thanks, Neil. It's nice to catch up and see you again. You look great. And Vic, it's so nice to meet you. And thanks for having me on. I had a good time.
Pleasure is ours.
Thank you.
Scott Stevens, incredibly forthright with everything that he said to us during our 40-minute discussion with him. And I think you and I kind of looked at each other when he was talking about the 4 elbowing penalties. And I think he really believes those were all bad calls.
Oh, I do too. I mean, we started laughing mostly because, I remember Bernie Perrant saying that, all the goals that went in on the other guy. They didn't go in on me. And that was hilarious. And then it was almost like when we said you only got 4 elbowing calls, and he goes, and those were bad calls. It was like he meant it to be funny. But then when you're thinking, I think he meant that. I think he meant that they were all bad calls, because he prided himself on not doing things that would put his team at a disadvantage.
I think one of the things that kind of gets lost in Stevens' career are some of the statistical accomplishments. We had 13 All-Star game appearances, 908 career points, and perhaps the most impressive stat of all, 22 seasons in the NHL, he was never a minus player.
Yeah, that is amazing. That is amazing, because usually when you're a defenseman that logs the amount of ice time that Stevens logged, and you have a tough year, like, for example, 96, when they missed the playoffs after winning the Cup in 95, you usually, it's pure math that you're going to end up as a minus because you're on the ice all the time in a losing season, and he never was.
Inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2007, arguably the greatest player class ever, as Stevens went in with Ronnie Francis, Mark Messier, and Al McGuinness.
Yeah, those are 4 first ballot Hall of Famers for sure.
And, of course, somebody else that you were close with went in the builders category that year, Jim Gregory.
Yeah, and Jimmy dearly departed, unfortunately. What a man, what a great man Jim Gregory was, not only in his time as GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs, but also in all the many years he served at the league office.
Great show today. A lot of fun having Scott Stevens on. And I'm really loving this Hall of Fame franchise, because you get to look back at so much and really walk these players through their entire lives. And, I think for us, and I think for our listeners too, it's very fulfilling to get these Hall of Fame players, away from the game element, but really more in a reflective mode.
Exactly. And being very insightful and very, intellectual about their answers in thinking them through and giving you answers that as a player they could never have given you. But now at this age, after retiring, they can reflect back on their career and really talk in depth about what they had accomplished and who helped them accomplish that.
That'll wrap up our show for today. Thank you for tuning in for the latest episode of NHL Wraparound Hall of Fame Edition. We'll have another Hall of Famer for you really soon. But once again, thanks for watching.
Thanks for joining us on the NHL Wraparound podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on all the NHL action.